All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 25th of May Ordinary Council meeting of the Shire of Capel. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Wadandi people. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their culture, and to elders past, present and their descendants who are with us today, and those who will follow in their footsteps. Record of attendance: we have full attendance of council here tonight, as well as our two directors and chief executive officer. There are no responses to previous public questions taken on notice. We now move to public question time. Have received some questions, first from Bronwyn Mutton of Stratham.
Mr CEO and Mr President and councillors, I'm Bronwyn Mutton of Mangles Road, Stirling Estate, Capel. There's been strong community support concerning requesting speed limit reduction to 80 km/h on Bustle Highway past the sections between Capel Drive North and Spur Road. It was reported that Main Road's plans to invite community opinions concerning this matter, but the process has been delayed. So my first question is, do the Shire of Capel CEO or councillors know when this community consultation will take place?
Thank you, Ms Mutton, for the question. Councillors and Shire officers received an update from Main Roads as recently as today. We understand that the site systems review has been completed and that the draft report information and their recommendations are still being analysed. Main Roads advise this takes approximately 3 months. Main Roads expect to commence the community information and consultation process in the beginning of the 4th quarter of 2022. Information gathered will then be fed into a route strategy that will consider intersections, interchanges, speed limits, signage and access points.
Thank you. So my second and third question I'll group together. How will the Capel public be advised of this meeting, and how long beforehand will Main Roads advise of this meeting to allow widespread public awareness of this process?
Sure, the meeting is being organised by Main Roads, so it's largely their responsibility. However, a community information and consultation sessions will be promoted widely and well in advance. The Shire of Capel will assist Main Roads in promoting those.
And how will the publicity be how will it be announced, or the public be advised?
I can't answer for Main Roads in that aspect, but the Shire of Capel will make that information available through our usual mediums, such as our website, our Facebook pages and other social media avenues. Okay,
thank you. Right, the second topic is one I've brought up before. The extractive industries application for lot 287 Southwest Highway, Gwindanup. Sections from my letter to the Shire of Capel and councillors from the 8th of October 2022. So this is what I wrote already to you all. This application is so important and complex that Shire of Capel staff and councillors must visit the site and understand the many implications for the environment and adjoining homeowners before deciding on how to vote on this EIL at the June council meeting. I feel it is imperative for councillors to view areas of importance and not stay only inside the council chambers in order to vote on this issue. It is an environmental hazard to allow for the further extraction of gravel on steep terrain here. Rehabilitation of local vegetation cannot be successful when the topsoil is removed, leaving only clay base underneath. I strongly oppose clearing of the important ecological native vegetation linkage of mature trees here. It takes more than 100 years for trees to develop hollows suitable for nesting birds and animals. So my one question is, who are the staff and councillors from the Shire of Capel who have visited this site in 2022?
Thank you, Ms Button, for the question. The assessing planning officer and engineering technical officer had various site visits as part of the work undertaken in preparation of the report for the council in April of 2022. A formal site visit occurred on the 30th of March 2022, attended by Councillor Christine Tarantoy, the Chief Executive Officer, the Manager of Planning Services and the Engineering Technical Officer. Other elected members have visited adjacent reserves to the site and viewed the site through that means. The item was deferred at the April 2022 ordinary meeting and will return to the council for the June or July 2022 meeting. Residents adjacent to the extractive industry site have extended an invitation to councillors and staff to visit the property prior to the item returning to council.
Thank you.
The other question we had received was from Mr. Glenbone of Delora, who doesn't appear to be in the audience tonight. However, I will read out his question. On page 81 of the Ordinary Council meeting minutes of the 27th of April 2022, minute OC 072/2022 is recorded as Officer Recommendation 15.2. The actual recommendation, as recorded on page 71 and 72, proposes that both items 2 and 3, the choice of approve, refuse. Councillor McCleary did not move that at all. He moved that for items 2 and 3, there was an alternative of refuse, which an amendment to the recommendation, as this is therefore what appeared in the council motion. Question 1, in confirming the minutes shortly after this session of public question time, will council please amend the minutes with the deletion of the officer's recommendation on page 81 and insert the actual council motion adopted? And the response to that question is, of course, to thank Mr. Bone for his question. He is correct. The council will be asked to consider an alternative recommendation tonight in relation to the confirmations of the April 2022 minutes to reflect its decision. All right. That concludes the public questions received. Were there any public questions from the floor? Yes, sir. Could you please state your name and locality for the minutes?
My name is Don Finlay from the locality of Boynup, Bunbury. Just came to the meeting tonight to inquire. I had an email exchange with Shire CEO regarding the cattle yards, and his statement was that Boynup Shire Council was supportive of animal welfare, and I'm just here for an explanation of that statement. Plus, I have an additional question.
Thank you, Mr. Finlay, for the question. Through its adoption of the lease agreement offered to Walser for the Boynup sale yards, as part of the annexure, council included a capital upgrade management plan to be included as part of the lease because of its concerns around animal welfare and the standard of the yards. It is a matter we take very seriously, and I suppose if the CEO wishes to expand further on what he meant directly between the email conversation between yourself and the CEO, I'll allow him to expand on that because I'm not privy to that conversation. Mr. CEO.
Through you, Shire President. Mr. Finlay, exactly what the Shire President said, we do take animal welfare seriously, and that was the driver behind when Council considered whether or not to renew the lease to Walser back in January of this year, that the intention there was to include as part of that lease two annexures. One is a capital upgrade plan to deal with all of those things that needed to be upgraded at the Boynup sale yards to improve animal welfare, and a second annexure to be a management plan to do the same. The lease has been constructed in a way that a default on delivering on and complying with both of those annexures constituted default on the lease, and the lease could therefore be removed from Walser if that occurred. So our intent is to lock those two things down as part of the lease and to ensure that they are delivered in the interest of good operations of the sale yards and animal welfare.
Thank you. Is the capital upgrades plan listed, or is it in effect on that agreement? I would like a copy of it.
The capital upgrade plan and management plan will be included as annexes to the lease. I'll just have to get clarification as to whether they are public documents. The CEO might be able to provide further comment on that part of the question.
I suppose the public would welcome some detail and specifics. I was here in January and February regarding heat mitigation. That falls under Section 59 of the Animal Welfare Codes and Regulations for sales yards in Australia. There was suffering during that time. There was a member of the public that passed out on February 18th, a lady from Boddington, due to heat stress. Mel was here at the January meeting. He stated his cattle were standing in water, pre-sale, sale, and unfortunately water happens too. So my idea of shades is not very good now in winter. And so cattle are unloaded into the offload area where the sand pens are. The sand pens are hollowed out, collecting water. They have to stand in water to water at the water trough. And I had a complaint to me on last Friday from a driver for a large transport company observing this.
Mr. Finn, I know this is a very passionate issue, but I'm going to need you to come to a question, please.
Well, we'll just leave it as a question to provide the public with some detail as to where this is all going, because it doesn't seem to me like it's going anywhere.
Sure.
Quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably in response to that, we are working to meet the deadline of the 30th of June to have the lease renewed. As I've mentioned, there are annexes to that lease to include capital upgrades and management plans in accordance with relevant state and federal regulations regarding animal welfare. Whether those documents can be made public, we can have a look at that in negotiation with the proprietor, given that it is a commercial operation. The CEO probably has a bit more information on that matter, so let him comment.
98% of cattle producers, including yourself, care and look after for their stock better than what they do at that sales yard in a 36-hour period.
And thank you, Shire President. I'll just respond to the question. So the two annexes will be confidential attachments to the lease. However, I'm confident that both the Shire and WALSA, once the lease is signed, would be happy to put out public information that talks about all of the capital upgrades that are planned and the time in which they're meant to occur and be finished.
Is there any more public questions? Mr. Norton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Norton, I'm Chairman of the Vast Zone of WA Farmers, and we're farmers out on Cloverdale Road, Capel. WA Farmers have their livestock council meeting next Friday, and obviously Boyne Up Sale Yards is well and truly on the agenda. And some of my question you've probably already answered, but I think that management plan and the document, farmers and certainly WA farmers will be wanting to scrutinise that very closely. And I think you're going to have to it'll have to be a public document. You can't hide it in a contract. You can try if you may, but I think we might have to get some legal advice on that. I certainly had a phone call from Noel Jones as to where you go post signing of the contract at the end of June, and how quickly you're going to enter into relocating the yards. Noel Jones has said that mine site on Lowry Road has now been passed by EPA and the Mines Department. It's coming up for sale, so obviously it's coming on the market, probably a bit early for what we want, unfortunately. You're not quite in a position to do it, but that's something we probably need to look at as to how we might be able to do that and where you're going to relocate the new sale yard to. But so I guess, Mr. Chairman, we're a month away from Drop Dead Day, so when are we going to get some more information on your plans going forward? Because you're certainly going to get a few questions, I think.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Mr. Norton. The Shire of Capel and Shire officers are very much keen to meet the deadline of the June the 30th to have the new lease signed by. Shire officers are still in negotiation with the lease and WALSA. I'm not privy to those negotiations, so CEO might be able to expand a bit further on where we're at with that.
Yes, sorry.
Through you, Shire President, progress to the negotiations with WALSA is going well. We're confident we'll meet the 30th of June deadline. We've currently received 2 drafts of the capital plan, the first of which we send back a whole range of additional information required. The second version of the capital upgrade plan is getting much closer to where we think it needs to be, so we're confident that that will be finished on time. Officers are meeting with WALSA next week to finalise a very important part of the management plan, which is around traffic management, because that has significant impact on safety, noise, dust and a whole range of other things. As I said, we're confident that we'll meet the 30th of June deadline, and at that point, after that point and the lease is signed, there'll be a whole range of information that can then be made available to the public. In terms of your second question around progressing to the identification of land for a future agribusiness precinct and including the sale yards, the intention for Council is to start that process early in the new financial year. It is subject to Council's deliberations on the annual draft budget, but it is our intention early in the new financial year to get on with it.
Thank you, sir. The only other issue is we've got a new Commonwealth government now. They're certainly indicated that animal welfare is going to be a very important issue so far as they're concerned. You know, they're going to ban the live sheep industry, and sale yards and live ships aren't all that much different. So obviously animal welfare is going to go up quite a few notches, and of course we've got foot and mouth and lumpy skin thing in Indonesia. Biosecurity is going to be a very big issue in the next couple of years, and point of sale yard is going to get caught up in all that.
Thanks, Mr. Norton. It's my intention to try and meet with the new Agricultural Minister, whoever that may be, as soon as possible. Are there any further public questions?
Good evening, President Kitchen, councillors, CEO Mr McMile and Shire staff. Thank you for accepting this question from Michael Tichbon of Boyanup. Michael was the founding member of the Capel Land Conservation District Committee, the LCDC, in 1992 and has been aware of all extractive industry licence applications in the Shire for over 40 years and served as a councillor from 1974 to 1982. Michael's question this evening is regarding Lot 287, the EIL on South Western Highway. The amended application for the EIL on Lot 287 South Western Highway Boyanup remains the most concerning EIL I have ever seen in my many years living in the Shire. I remain extremely concerned with the impact the operation would have if it were to be approved. In particular, I am concerned with the area of erosion, waterlogging and potential flooding due to the steepness of the site. Regarding Lot 287 and the complexity of the hydrology aspect of this amended application, will the Shire consider engaging an experienced, qualified, consulting environmental engineer with expertise in the area of erosion, water runoff, flooding, basin containment, etc., to technically review this application if the Shire has not already engaged a qualified engineering consultant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Brown, for the question. The CEO better provide comment on your question.
Through you, Shire President, thank Mr Tichborne for providing earlier notice of his question. I know we've been having emailing all day. The Shire has completed a preliminary, so the original item was deferred from the April 2022 council meeting with the intent to come back to the June council meeting. The Shire has received some preliminary information from the proponent in relation to the new application. The Shire is still waiting for further information from the proponent, particularly in relation to updated noise modelling and updated engineering. We're yet to receive that information. If we don't receive that information from the proponent fairly promptly, it is likely that that item will come back to council in July, not June, because we simply would not have been able to complete the assessment. Once we get that updated information from the proponent, we will then make a decision about whether or not we need to engage our own further independent engineering advice or not.
Thank you. Are there any further public questions? No? All right. We'll move on to applications for leave of absence. An application from Councillor Clues.
Thank you. For the next ordinary council meeting, June.
Are there any other applications? Councillor McCleary. For which meeting?
Yeah, I leave of absence for the June and July ordinary council meetings.
Are there any further applications? Councillor Towntree.
Leave of absence for July council meeting.
July. Okay, are there any other applications? So we have a request from Councillor Towntree for July, Councillor Clues for June, Councillor McCleary for June and July. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Sciano. Seconder. Councillor Noonan. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Okay, declarations of interest. None received. Notice of items to be discussed behind closed doors. There are none. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting of the 27th of April 2022. Just for the benefit of the members of the public and those listening online, there is an updated officer's recommendation that the ordinary council meeting minutes of the 27th of April be confirmed as a true and accurate record with the following amendments. Number 1, the record of attendance include the omitted name of Councillor Cara Andrew. And 2, the amended minute of OC 072-2022 Council Decision 15.2 to accurately reflect the decision that was carried by the Council. Is there a mover for those? Councillor McCleary. Is there a seconder? Councillor Noonan. Any discussion? No, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Okay. There are no announcements by the presiding person without discussion. Item 10, petitions, deputations and presentations. We have one presentation from Councillor Mogg, who will say a few words.
Thank you, President. I have another certificate to give to the Shire. We had the Festival of Halls held at the Jullarup Hall, as most know. So on behalf of the Woodfordia Inc. Company and Festival Halls and Jullarup Community Inc., a recognition certificate to say thank you of the event. It's signed by the wonderful Gina Williams and Jack Davies, the artists that were at the event, and says hello to the Shire of Capel and thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Item 11, motions of which previous notice has been given. There are none. Item 12, questions of which previous notice has been given. There are none. We now move into section 13, Chief Executive Officer reports. Item 13.1, the general meeting of electors motion consideration. There's an officer's recommendation there. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Terrantroy. Is there a seconder? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Terrantroy.
Move as read. So, yep. It's about the annual general electors meeting I held on the 20th. Request of the Chief Executive Officer to investigate and provide a report to Council on the possibility of obtaining black spot funding for the Bustle Highway between Capel Drive in the north and Spur Street in the south.
Councillor McCleary. Is there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move an amendment to strike out point 2.
Okay, we'll just get that up on the board. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Andrew. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. I simply believe that this request for a report is going to be a significant waste of time and resources. The Bustle Highway between Capel Drive North and Spur Street in the south is 100% Main Road's responsibility. We have, without the need for a investigation, zero option nor opportunity to obtain funding. We won't touch that road. It's not our road, so we certainly will not obtain any funding whatsoever for it. So it seems pointless to ask staff to spend time and resources on an investigation to come to that very clear answer.
Councillor Andrew.
So, thank you. I think that part 2 is preemptive. We've heard tonight that the investigation by the Main Roads isn't completed yet. I think before we spend time and resources doing anything, that we should wait for that report to be concluded. I also note that as per Main Roads and the investment.infrastructure.gov.au website, anyone can actually nominate for a black spot to be investigated. That includes state and territory governments, local councils, community groups and associations, road user groups, industries and individuals. So requesting that parcel of road be investigated for obtaining black spot funding is actually something that anyone can do, and considering where we are on the Main Roads investigation, I would imagine that they are probably better placed to be doing that than us spending time and resources doing that before the report has even been concluded.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any speakers against the amendment? Speakers for? Councillor McCleary.
Totally agree with the two comments that have made. Look, I just don't think it would get legs, and I totally agree with Councillor Andrews, that this is just way too early in the investigation, and we've got a lot of work happening with Main Roads about that intersection, and I think we wait for that. I also don't think it'll reach the criteria of black spot funding, but that's a personal opinion, not a statement. So, yeah, look, I totally agree with the amended motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other speakers? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a briefing this afternoon from Main Roads, and it was about, in part, this section of road, Capel Drive. Unfortunately, I was not able to get to the start of that briefing, and I was wondering if either you or the CEO or someone could perhaps fill us in a little bit more in terms of what Main Roads actually said about this road, and whether there's anything in their discussion that might guide us a little bit better in this debate.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll take it as a question. Main Roads have investigated certain designs, although it's very high level. Not in a position yet to discuss that with the public. However, through the safe systems audit that they've conducted, once they've distilled the information out of that, they're hoping then to consult with the community on those designs and methods of easing the issues between the two entry and exit points until they can get to some more larger scale design, which of course would require significant funding. So it's probably too early to say at this stage exactly what they are planning until that information is distilled out of the safe systems audit.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another question, did they give a time frame for delivering that report, and for the ultimate work that they hope to do with that part of the road?
Well, they're hoping to initiate the community consultation by the fourth quarter of this year. So I assume the report would be made available to the public then. In terms of, so the second part of your question was would that be subject to funding and availability at the time, depending on demand and the need for the road? Do you have any? Are you still speaking, Councillor, or have you concluded?
Yeah, no, thanks, Mr. President. I'm just wondering whether there is any point in us putting together a council position requesting black spot funding. I would assume that any request from any individual, any organisation, does in fact have a positive impact in that it just brings it once again to the attention of Main Roads and ultimately to the Minister, saying that this is a problem, this is an issue, this is something that the citizens, the ratepayers are concerned about, it's something that the council's concerned about, it's something that the schools are concerned about, and that culmination of concern, I believe that would have an impact. It just helps to increase pressure on the people who do make those decisions.
I can probably answer your question in that if the council so chooses to receive the motion, then it in somewhat a way agrees with the intent that was carried by the annual electors meeting, that then gives myself and the CEO the imprimatur to then act. And we can then advocate on behalf of the community to push Main Roads and various other agencies to upgrade the road out the front. Does that answer your question? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I've said it before. I've had a lot of experience with addressing troublesome roads. I led the campaign at South Western Highway to have the speed limit reduced to 80 kilometres an hour. Was very involved with the safer systems approach and auditing process there, along with the community to address that issue. And so I've had a bit of experience with the black spot funding system before, and the black spot funding system works off a casualty rate of 0.2 casualties per kilometre of road. which is something that we have discussed before as a criteria that the road out the front of Capel simply doesn't meet. Now, there are a number of accidents, and the term an accident waiting to be happen has often been thrown around in regards to Bussells Highway, and there is some merit in that. I mean, the Black Spot funding program does recognise roads that are accidents waiting to happen. However, they'll only do so if a full safety audit has been conducted. So yes, if the safety audit has been conducted by Main Roads, and when that is conducted, there may be an avenue, depending on the outcome of that audit, to apply for black spot funding. And I mean, Councillor Clues also mentioned as well, I don't feel that council should be trying to take the responsibility of obtaining the funding and potentially taking on responsibility of a multi-million-dollar road infrastructure project. However, in the current state, we do need to wait until the safety audit is done, as we would not meet the criteria of the black spot funding. I mean, we don't need to have an officer's report for me to be able to say that. But if it does come back, then council can have a position, and quite frankly, I think council has had a position. I think the council's worked incredibly well with Main Roads. I mean, the briefing today was great. There's a timeline, work is being done. I mean, it would have been completed earlier if the infrastructure upgrades weren't occurring on Bussells Highway for the last so many months. I think that the assessment would have occurred earlier. But I think for now, I was actually going to walk in this room and go, well, this is actually, we'll have a think about this. But I think, yeah, I have to concur with councillors, and I just don't. I can give you the answer now. That's the point.
Are there any other speakers for or against? Councillor Towntroy?
Yes, I think this is a good amendment by Councillor Clues, because the briefing this afternoon made it very clear of the process, and that, yes, so I'm actually happy with it. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Clues, do you wish to close? Nope. I'll put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 7-2. Okay, so that becomes, so point 2 is removed. So now we return to the substantive item without the point 2. Were there any other speakers for or against? Councillor Clues?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, again, thank you, colleagues. That was, I think, the right thing to do. I don't want anyone in the public to think for a second that I or anyone else here, I don't believe, doesn't wish for action as soon as possible on that road. It's terrible. We know it's bad. It's not fun trying to get in and out. I'm only driving a car or a motorbike. I'd hate to think how people are going with caravans and larger, slower vehicles. It's not nice. The sooner something happens, the better. And I think everyone at this table, don't want to speak for them, but I think on this occasion they would all agree. So please don't take the decision we just made as any sort of desire to slow anything down, make anything harder, or that we don't want anything to happen. That certainly isn't the case. We look forward to the processes that need to be completed, being completed, and getting on with seeing some change and some vast improvement on that road.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Towntroy, you wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Okay, item 14.1, the Blown Vista Basketball Court. There are 2 officers' recommendations there. The first motion is a revocation motion, so it will require a mover, a seconder, and then a third councillor to consent before the motion is discussed. So is there a mover for the first revocation motion? Councillor Noonan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mogg. Is there a third councillor? Councillor Towntroy. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. just scrolling through to get to the right page. But yeah, I'd like to move that motion as read, that it's a procedure that we should, I think, follow to revoke that motion so that we can get on with making a good decision about that.
Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, President. I also concur with the mover and support the motion and as read.
Are there any other councillors to speak against? Not sure. We'll just... Yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry, I'll just offer the call to Councillor Tarantroy first, actually, as a seconder, just in case she has that right. I'm not sure, so I'll offer that to you.
Just for those people who are looking at home and don't have the agenda open in front of them, I'm just going to read what the officer's recommendation is. Number 1, the basketball black backboard ring and associated pole be immediately removed from the basketball court.
Sorry, Councillor, we're only dealing with the officer's recommendation 1.
Oh, sorry.
Which is just the revocation motion.
Yes.
Which is to revoke the
Yes.
previous decision of OC
Yes.
1.
So that we can do that.
9-1.
Yes, sorry,
Yep.
I apologise.
Are there any other councillors wishing to speak on the motion? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. I can't believe we're discussing a basketball hoop again. I'm absolutely going to vote against this on moral grounds. We should have got this done the first time. We need to just get on with doing it, frankly.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other councillors wishing to speak on the matter? You already had your right of reply, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Noonan, do you wish to close? I'll put that one to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 7-2. So we now move to officer's recommendation number 2. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Tarantroy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Noonan. Councillor Tarantroy.
Okay, so this is the reason why we had to revoke that decision from the 29th of September 2021. The officer's recommendation is that the basketball backboard ring and associated pole be immediately removed from the basketball court located between Arga Way and Dablone Vista in Dayalup Vista Ribbon Park. 2, the Shire officers monitor and the usage of half courts over the next 6 months to understand the adequacy of basketball half court playing options throughout the wider community. 3, Shire officers recommence work to identify potential current and future opportunities for a half-court basketball court in the Dayalup West area if required.
Councillor Noonan.
Does Councillor Tarantroy, do you wish to speak further, or you just want to read it?
She was offered that right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And I sympathise with Councillor Clues. It is a little bit embarrassing that this has come back, that it's taken 3 goes to get it right, but I do believe that we are getting it right tonight with this recommendation. The basketball backboard ring and the surface is over the permissible noise level for every bounce, every time the basketball hits the backboard, every bounce on the court during the daytime and during the night time. It's been measured. It's very clear. The results are very clear. It's non-compliant, and it's unfortunate that it's taken this long to get to this point. However, we're here now. We realise we have a non-compliant backboard. We really don't have any choice other than to remove it. I think it's good that we also have in this motion the idea or the opportunity for the Shire to investigate the use of half courts and the need for half courts, and to investigate a better location for it. I note the comments or the recommendation further down in the report that there are concerns with the proposed relocation that we did make closer to the stairs at Dallyallup in the park there, that even though it's more than twice the distance from the nearest potential residents, that it might also lead to the same sorts of problems because of the shape of the terrain, given that it's also has that same sort of amphitheatre type effect. So I think there are better locations, perhaps down by the surf club, but that's up for the Shire officers to look at and to examine whether we need to at all. The other point that was made that the costs for building a new basketball half court have multiplied, not exponentially, but they have significantly increased. I think means that now is not a good time to be looking at replacing it. So I would strongly urge my fellow councillors to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, President. I'll move an amendment in case I'm not the only one that has a taste for it, that we strike out point 1.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Amendment? The amendment lapses for want of a seconder. Councillor, do you wish to exercise your right to speak?
I will second it, just to give Councillor Clues the opportunity to just place his case.
I'd declare it lapsed without a seconder. If I can ask you just to remove the thing, then we can...
It's okay. I think it's clear where it was going to end up, obviously, so no problem. I'll just speak to it. And without that amendment, I guess I'll speak against the item. I'm not happy to be removing anything immediately without some kind of plan in place to what we do next and the future movements and where we're going to replace it and what the needs are of the area. All these things I think are good things to investigate, so points 2 and 3 both make a lot of sense to me. But I can't support immediate removal without that answer being provided.
Is there a speaker for the motion? Councillor Sciano.
Seeing as this has taken us a couple of years, I'll just say the same thing again. I don't want to remove the basketball court. I think they are a great asset to the community. They are important. We need them. What triumphs that is compliance, and it's simply this court is not compliant. Point 2 and point 3 of the recommendation are great. We should be investigating how we can fill that gap within the community, and Councillor Clues is spot on. We should have a plan. Unfortunately, while we sit around and wait for a plan, it doesn't make things compliant. So we need to take approach to bring things into compliance and then make a plan from there. So, I supported the removal last time. I'm quite surprised it hadn't already been removed. I hadn't had any complaints made to me directly, so I probably didn't know. But this is a conversation of compliance. To me, it's a non-negotiable. I think the complainant has gone out of their way to fund the acoustic assessment themselves. You know, we've had that validated by our staff. Quite the simple fact is that this court is non-compliant.
Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Andrew?
Thank you. Can I move an amendment before I speak, please?
You may, yes.
So, can I scrap the entire officer's recommendation? Oh, can I do that as an amendment?
No. You can, if you wish to do a motion that is of a different nature, you can foreshadow, and if this motion is lost, then yours can be discussed.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
So,
Should you read out your foreshadowed motion?
So, it is that the floor matting and mesh backboard, as in the attachments, be costed and presented as an alternative option to removal.
We'll just wait for that one to get up on the board before we proceed. Make sure you're happy with your foreshadowed motion.
There should be a B between attachments and costed. As in, like, not a letter B, the word B. I'm happy with that. I'm happy for the CEO or the president to have some input into it if they would prefer different wording, but I'm happy with the gist of that.
If you're comfortable with your foreshadowed motion, then you can proceed to speak for or against the item as you were.
Thank you. So I'm really disappointed that our kind of go-to is just kind of rip it up. I think particularly if staff have gone to the trouble of including the items in the attachment, why they haven't been costed and presented as an option, I don't understand. I think that the more free physical activities that we can encourage our youth to use are good. Keep them out of trouble, and I just think removing this just sets a bad precedent.
Councillor Clues, a question, I presume?
A question, thank you,
Yes.
Mr. President. Has acoustic reports or any investigation been done onto as to the compliance of the other two basketball courts pictured in the attachments?
Not that I'm aware of, but no, that's a no.
So, second question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Is there a chance that by sort of pushing this through and agreeing that this is non-compliant and we need to fix it, that we put ourselves in a position where we end up blanketly banning these facilities because the others may have a similar issue?
I'm probably not qualified to give a legal opinion on that. However, it doesn't negate the fact that if a community facility is non-compliant, if it's reported and found to be non-compliant, it must be dealt with, I suppose, in the manner appropriate.
I guess third question then, if you don't mind, Mr.
Yes.
President. Will the staff be investigating the other basketball courts to ensure their compliance in line with this one?
Probably not unless any direction is given. Any further questions? All right. Are there any other speakers for or against? Councillor Terriger is the mover. You can't speak again unless you wish to suspend standing orders to allow you to speak. It's a foreshadowed motion. We're still on the substantive motion. The foreshadowed only gets discussed if this one is lost. Yeah. Are there any speakers for or against? Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, with all due respect to my long-suffering PTSD colleagues who've been here longer than I just want to say that I think this motion is probably... no one likes ripping up facilities, but as Deputy President Shiano said earlier, it's been deemed that it's a problem. I think we'll just be delaying the inevitable if we go down the investigating other options path. I just think we need to put this one to bed and vote according to the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor McCleary.
I have a question.
Yes, Councillor.
Is it just removing the backboard, or is it including the hard stand as well?
The hard stand, I'm led to believe, will be remaining. It's only to remove the backboard, ring and associated pole.
Yeah, righto. Look, I think it's done and dusted. It's an item that we've got some large costs if we want to do it somewhere else. So I think that's a significant thing. And as pointed out by Councillor Shiano, we've got readings that it's non-compliant. I heard all the other arguments and I understand it all, but I really, the location of this one, I don't think it's going to be a real hurtful thing to people. And interesting, by leaving the concrete, I just kind of have this set in mind someone's going to roll up in a trailer with a portable basketball hoop and stick it on the concrete and do it anyway. But look, people will be active in the area. I think having the concrete there, maybe paint a couple of squares and they can play handball on it. There might be other retrofitting to the options of the area. So let's not get just focused on basketball. My kids didn't play basketball, they played soccer and they did surf club and things like that. So there's lots of other activities. But yeah, tongue-in-cheek, I think it'll be interesting. I've probably preempted it by saying that you could bring a portable one there now. But look, I'm totally for this officer's recommendation. I just want to see it go away. I mean, I was pretty disappointed seeing this on the agenda and thinking it's all done and dusted. I was never going to have to deal with a basketball hoop or court. But yeah, let's get it away and get it done.
Are there any other speakers? I suppose I'll have a comment. I might not be the image of physical prowess I was in my youth, but basketball is very important to me because that's what I played a lot in my youth. So I too am quite sad to see such a facility removed from Dalyella, but I understand why we're doing it. Unfortunately, there is some late night antisocial behaviours that are occurring there. The issue is not through the daytime usage, it's the nighttime usage where we're having issues. And even as recently as last night, there was a car park there at 3 a.m. with its lights shining into homes playing basketball. I don't know why they're choosing 3 a.m. to do that, but of course that's obviously going to cause issues for us. We've gone down the road of looking at behaviour mitigation, such as talking to the police, enforcement. Unfortunately, it just couldn't work. We have looked at some noise mitigation methods. There's currently actually a mesh backboard on this half court right now, but that has not attenuated the noise compliance issue. So unfortunately, this is probably the option we are left with, and there are probably some other options to look at down the future. I've been sent this morning, City Council over in Melbourne is in fact having the same issue, and so they've got in contact with their local university there, and some uni students have actually developed a device which blocks the basketball ring at certain times of the night. So that might be an option that's available to us in the future. However, unfortunately, this is where we are now, and we have a non-compliance that we have to deal with. So we could see the court return, hopefully at some stage. I would very much like it to, But in the meantime, this is where we are, and we could potentially repurpose the court hard surface for other uses, which it already is getting used for, which is for young toddlers that ride around on their little scooters and things. So we could paint a bit of a track on it for them or something. So as much as I don't want to see the half court go, we're in a matter of non-compliance and we must rectify that. Okay, there was only one other person who had the right to speak. Do they wish? No? Yes, Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, President. I can't believe we are, yes, 2 years on this motion and on this issue. I can't recommend and endorse the officer's recommendation enough. It says it all there. And as the term said, let's put this to bed tonight. I also concur with Councillor Schiano that it's a non-compliant issue. And it also, it fails all stakeholders involved, the residents, the youth that use it, and I support them wholly, and I do think they should have a basketball hoop that they can access all hours of the day. I highly support that. And this facility does not provide that. It's non-compliant in the way it's positioned, built, etc. So please, Council, let's make the right decision. Thank you.
I believe every member has exercised their right to speak on the matter, so unless anyone wishes to suspend standing orders, I will pass the call to the mover of the motion to sum up. Councillor Tarrant-Troy.
Thank you, councillors, for the rigorous debate, because this is important. I didn't speak to it because it was clear to me that why we're removing it, because it's non-compliant, and we have to come from a place of compliance. I urge all councillors to vote for this motion so that we can put it to bed. And yeah, because we've just got to get back to a place of compliance. The ND engineering report was very clear, and it's sad that it's taken 2 years to get to this decision, but now we have an opportunity to make the right decision. Thank you.
I'll put that one to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? That's carried 7-2. Now move into community and corporate reports. Item 15.1, the council policy review. So there is quite a large recommendation there. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Tarrant-Troy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor Tarrant-Troy.
Okay, so the background to why we're moving this motion is so that we can put in a review policy and revoke A to Z and double A to double M, so that we can actually clean it up and make it more workable. That's the basic crux of it, because there's policies that are in the Shire that's actually making it difficult for the staff to actually do their job. So we need to clear this stuff so that we can move on to let them work with the policies that are going to come. So it's to get rid of policies that make staff's work cumbersome and serves no purpose that I can see except to be cumbersome. It's quite long, so I won't read it all out, but I have read it, and so it's very clear to me why we're doing this. It's not just to hide anything, it's very transparent, okay? And I implore councillors to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not much to add. Look, it's really just a bit of administrative housekeeping, and I think the Shire team will basically benefit from this recommendation. So, just to echo Councillor Terrantroy's thoughts, I'd encourage everybody to support it this evening.
Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. Ideally, I'd like to move an amendment. Do you mind if I ask what might be the easiest way to do this? If I may share my concerns, I guess, first. There are some of these items in the attachment. I'll scroll down to find an example. Where's it gone? Sorry, there are some items that it looks like we'll be delegating to a policy that doesn't yet exist. And I'm not comfortable with that. I'd like to remove the items that's the case for from the motion. I had this on here. Retain. I just looked at 4 of them whilst other people were talking, and now I can't find a single one. Let's revoke. It was the first one was climate change. I must be scrolling straight past it. Here it is. This policy will be replaced by the council adoption of the sustainability framework, which is currently being developed. So it's not yet ready. So climate change, adaptation and sustainability is the first one. It's not the only one. I don't know if it's...
Okay. I suppose the easiest way to do it would be to move an amendment to remove the particular policies. To remove the policies from this particular motion and probably create a new point that the following point policies such as the climate change, adaptation, sustainability be revisited once the management policy is endorsed. That would probably be the best way. So, do you know which policies you wish to
I wonder if we
have
can
removed?
if we can amend to remove those policies which don't currently have a replacement and defer them to such time as they do, or something.
Would you say management procedure? Are you including policies in there which have since been superseded by state or federal legislation?
No, because they would then have a replacement. It's solely the ones that currently don't have a replacement, and particularly the ones that we're saying right here, we're working on one, so it's coming. I just think it would be more appropriate to leave the revocation, I might have made that one up, of that until such times it does have a replacement.
Okay. Would you be able to identify which policies you'd like to?
Yeah, I thought that.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll start with climate change. Perhaps we can set aside standing order so everyone can have a chat. It looks like some other people have found some others.
Okay. Make sure we get the right standing order. So we'll just hold in this for a moment. If you just want to keep looking for. All right, what we might do, because if you wish to have a discussion about which policies, we have to, before you do an amendment, you'd have to withdraw your amendment. We can then suspend the standing orders, and then you can remove your amendment.
Yes, okay. Remove my amendment then. Thank you. Withdraw.
Withdraw. All right. I'll move that we suspend standing orders 10.1 and 10.2 to allow free discussion on this matter. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Clues. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. All right. Councillor Clues has... Could you please identify which policies you wish?
So the climate change adaptation, council facility hire and usage. It asks that a policy should be transferred to a management procedure. That management procedure doesn't yet exist. Perhaps it would be simpler to defer the item until such time as replacements are available.
Well, if they're management procedures, they're internal, adopted by the EMT, not managed by the council. Yep.
Okay, so we don't do management policies, it's only council policies that I don't want to revoke then. For example, climate change.
So they are council policies, and some of these policies have been either superseded by state and federal legislation, or have, at the time there was probably limited guidance, so council created a policy, whereas they've become probably more operational. That is the intent from the officer's recommendation. The advice just received is that staff can't generate a management procedure while council has a conflicting policy. So the idea would be, if they're revoked this evening, tomorrow morning they would become management procedures.
Okay, that's not the case for all of them though, like the climate change adaptation and sustainability, for example. There's no mention of a management procedure. It's...
So, yep. Yes, Councillor, you make a comment?
So, would it be possible to defer this and then come back next month with those kind of foreshadowing management policies, which will obviously be in draft, then... Start again.
Yeah. Just for the benefit of those listening, probably best, yes.
So, would it work if we deferred this item and then it comes back next month with those draft management policies attached, and then we can see how they're transferring across? Because I think, and I don't want to speak for Dave, but I think that's kind of my issue, is that we're transferring across to something else that we haven't even seen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand the concern, but I suppose as management procedures, they're not for council to see anyway. They're internal documents. Councillor McCleary?
Yeah, I had a question, and it's along Dave's lines with the climate change and adaptation, sustainability. If we withdraw a policy and there isn't a policy to replace it, what happens? Go on. Yeah, Mr. the CEO to respond.
Through you, Shire President, if we don't have a direction that's provided by our policy and we believe we need direction, then we bring the item to council to give us that direction. If council are interested in removing the climate change policy from this list, and then we bring it back once the climate change framework's adopted, then that would be fine.
I kind of thinking that's where we need to head, because if we don't have a policy and we're saying we're going to create a policy, so that's one thing in that. And in the answers, I suppose in the questions of what are we doing if they're shifting to a management thing, what we're doing is we're making an agreement. We don't need to make a decision on those policies. We're transferring ownership of those to management to run with. So what you've got to really think is this something we want to sit at council and make a decision about, and look at those as the ones that you want to pull out, or otherwise you accept what's being said in there. So, but I totally agree with you. If we're removing a policy and creating a policy, then those need to be, we need to have a policy come and a change. So it's not so much removing a policy. I think you're probably updating a policy. Is that the way it looks?
So, for the benefit then of the meeting, if elected members have any concerns of policies they'd like to see before they're revoked, we'll list them now, and then an amendment can be moved once we've returned back to standing orders, and we can proceed from there. So, Councillor Clues, yes?
Thank you. Yeah, I've just found another one, donations. This is the subject matter of this policy will be used in the review of the acceptable treatment of donations policy. So it's to move to a review of another policy. I think at this point I'd like to move to adjourn this item to next month so we can workshop this.
You can't move till we're back in standing orders.
Then I'll move that we come out of standing orders.
Okay. Is there a seconder to the moving back into standing orders? Seconded, Councillor Andrew. All those in favour? Anyone against? It's carried 8-1. Councillor Territory. So, Councillor Clues, you still had the call. Did you wish to...
Thank you. Yes, if I could move to adjourn this item to the next ordinary council meeting.
Would you like to add a purpose?
Yes, for a chance to briefly workshop this item prior to seeing it again.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Andrew. Councillor Clues, do you wish to speak on it?
No, I think it's pretty obvious. I think there's a few of us of the same frame of mind that we'd like to see replacements for some of these items, and going through them and unpicking them is just going to take us a few minutes, and I'd rather not waste the time of a meeting to do so.
Councillor Andrew. I believe you get a... No, only the mover. No, I was just double checking if the seconder gets to speak on a defer, only the mover does. So, just having a bit of a brain fog. Okay. Put the deferral to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's lost 3-6. Councillor Clues.
Thank you. I guess I'll speak against this item. I think it would be a terrible position to put ourselves in to be leaving policies revoked without replacements. These are directions that we as council are responsible for giving the staff and are some of the most important things we do. Without these policies in place, we have no direction on these items, and I don't think that's appropriate. It's most certainly absolutely unnecessary. So I guess all I can do now is speak against the item and hope that it comes back to us more complete.
Is there a speaker for the item? Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I completely understand the point around addressing some of these policies and removing them from the list to allow for the subsequent policies to be developed first. However, I don't agree that we can't do that in this room tonight. I mean, quite simply, we've had this agenda for a while. Amendments can be passed. In fact, I might, just for the sake of getting things rolling, I will potentially put an amendment forward to remove the climate change and adaptation sustainability policy from that list. My understanding as well is that if we remove it from the list, it doesn't direct staff it doesn't give staff any direction, meaning that they can go away and continue to work as they would have anyway, and ultimately they can bring it back to council if we remove it off that list now. And this is, I believe that we can go through this list now and remove the ones that we want in an amendment. So I will move an amendment to remove the climate change adaptation and sustainability policy from that list. In case someone accidentally heckles another one that's on that list that doesn't have a subsequent policy to go. I mean, the donations one, the delegation was revoked. The subject matter of this policy will be used in the review of the acceptable treatment of donations policy. I'll add the donations policy to that as well. I completely understand. Should I move that first before I continue speaking?
Yes, if you want to speak to the item, yes.
Well,
so do you wish to just state for the meeting your amendment?
So my amendment is to remove C, climate change adaptation and sustainability, and H, donations, and letter and number subsequent. Media.
I'd rather there not be calling across the chamber, please.
But they're the two I can see. Anyone else around anyone else at the table can obviously move an amendment if they haven't spoken as well. But I'm going to move those two donations. So I'll just move that.
Is there a seconder to the amendment? Councillor Andrew.
Cool.
Councillor Sciano.
So speaking to the amendment, as I mentioned, we can deal with this tonight. We can remove the ones that are an issue. It gives staff no direction. So we can have that discussion, and I take it upon councillors to continue those discussions. But I don't feel that the entire item needs to be thrown out to do so.
Councillor Andrew.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The council facility hire and usage that's moving to a management procedure, the policy is that procedure ready to go? So it will be in effect tomorrow?
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President. So when Council moved to the online booking of Space to Go, which is the system that we now use for the booking of all our community venues, those procedures were needed to be developed as part of getting that software ready to go and launching. So those procedures already exist. So in effect, we don't need the policy anymore. It's run through the software of Space to Go.
So can I ask a second question?
Yes.
So The only thing that's changed then is the way that the community hires our facilities. So there's been no change in terms and conditions or fees or anything like that.
I don't believe so. If the CEO or the Director wishes to expand on that. The Director of Community and Corporate Services.
Hello, thank you for your question. The fees can't change because when we adopted the fees and charges policy for this financial year, those are the fees and charges that have been set through the Space to Co system, and the terms and conditions are just the same. In fact, what we are doing, we're maintaining the current system that we do with our bookings to allow those community members that need to get savvy with the system, because it is obviously online, and then the same terms and conditions, whether you do it on or offline, are still in place.
Any further questions? Nope. As the seconder to the amendment, do you wish to speak? Councillor Sciano's amendment to remove climate change adaptation and donations. No. Is there any speakers against the amendment? Speakers for? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I think it's correct just dealing with those ones that create a bit of an issue of not having something in place with ready and having something ready to replace it. It's more an edit than it is a new policy. So I think that's the way it should have been worked. Quite happy with the amendment, and I think we should approve it as councillors.
Are there any other speakers to the amendment for or against? Councillor Sciano. I'll put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? Oh, sorry. I'll do it again. Those in favour? And those against? And that's carried unanimous. All right, so we're back to the substantive motion. Are there any speakers for or against the motion? Any speakers? No? Councillor Terrantroy, you wish to close? No, I'll put that one to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 8-1. Okay, move on to item 15.2, delegations review of 2022. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Andrew. Is there a seconder? Councillor Terrantroy. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. I'd like to move it with 3 amendments. So the
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yep. So the first amendment is to delegation 102, that it remains the same, at the figure of $10,000 or 5%. Delegation 114, I'll just bring it up. If we can add in, sorry, why is that not on? The wrong screen. Okay, so then 114. Is adding a point 3 that says to include only those items of plant approved by council for disposal. And removing delegation 148 from consideration for tonight, so that council can receive further information as to the firearm licences.
We'll just get that up on the board.
Sorry.
Is that to your satisfaction, Councillor Andrew? So that was moved with amendment. So does the seconder concur with those amendments?
Yeah, sorry. It should, it's gone now. The third one that's now dropped down to page 23 should say firearm, not fire licensing. Sorry, Tom.
Does the seconder concur with those? Yes. Okay, Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. So I'll start with 102 because that's the first one. It's just my gut feeling that $50,000 or I'll just bring it up. $20% or $50,000 is too much for it to not come back to councillors. As has been stated previously, $50,000 represents about 5% of our rates revenue, and I don't, in that context, I don't consider that $50,000 or 20% fit within the definition of the word minor. Delegation 114, we discussed at roundtable tonight, and it was explained that its intention was to only apply to plant that has been approved by council for disposal, but it doesn't actually say that, so that just cleans that up. And I had some questions as to whether or not people could run. Let's bring up 148 on my screen. Whether or not firearm dealers could run those facilities or run those enterprises from their residential properties under our planning scheme, and no one seems to know. So that was just the further information that applies to that one.
Councillor Towntroy.
I reserve my right to speak.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Speakers, Councillor Dillon.
Sorry, Mr. President. Look, I'll just put my thoughts on the record here as speaking against Councillor Andrews' motion. Look, I know $50,000 is a lot of money, but I think going back to 10 or 5% in the current environment is probably would hamstring our officers, and that on that sort of level, I just maybe 10,000's a little too small, but maybe 50,000's a bit big. I'd probably prefer to see a number somewhere in between. And regarding Councillor Andrews' amendment to 146, I would have thought if firearm sales were happening from some residential property, it would be authorised by WA Police. So just put that on the record.
Is there a speaker for the motion? Councillor Noonan.
I think Councillor Andrew makes a valid point. It is part of our responsibility to do the best we can to try and keep an eye on the financial performance of the Shire. Now, this is in no way to question or query the competency of the CEO or any of the officers, but it's about us staying in touch and having an idea of where things are going, and so I think it's important. I see the merit in the point that Councillor Andrew makes with this amendment. I'd also like to just raise a query or that in 102, that point 2 or condition number 2 in 102, and just as I'm raising this because I'm just wondering whether this should actually also be included in the amendment, that the point 2, the delegation to approve variations for a single contract, is limited to a total accrued value of, that's been raised from $30,000 to $200,000. You know, I understand Councillor Dillon's point that we don't want to hamstring or make life difficult, but that's an even bigger leap in terms of handing over that authority, and whether in doing that we're abrogating our responsibility to, you know, stay in touch or stay on board, keep an eye on, you know, that's our one of our key functions or key roles, that we're supposed to be financial stewards. So I support Councillor Andrews' motion, and if this motion is successful, then I'd foreshadow, I suppose, another amendment to also include the 200,000.
Sorry, apologies.
In condition 2.
Councillor, before you conclude, just because it sounds like you wish to move an amendment, this is the substantive motion. It was moved with the amendments.
So then we'd need to foreshadow an additional motion, an additional amendment.
You can move it. You can move an amendment.
Oh, okay.
Is what I'm saying. If you don't now, and we vote on the substantive motion, we'd move on to the next item. It was moved with those changes.
Yeah. Well, I'd then also include the condition number 2 on 102, that the increase from $30,000 to $200,000 be also be removed.
So so we just need to clarify that amendment, Councillor Noonan. Are you wishing for it just to remain unchanged at the currently approved 30,000?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could you could amend the entire point 2, 102 there to be that condition 102, delegation 102 remains unchanged. Yes. So you should change your amendment to
yes.
That? Yep.
To that. Yeah, that it remain unchanged.
Is there a seconder to that amendment? Councillor Andrew? Councillor Noonan?
No, thanks, Mr. President. I think it's important that we remain, that we don't abrogate our responsibility to be financially in touch and in tune with what's happening.
Is there a speaker against the amendment? Councillor McCleary?
Okay, first question is, there's specific conditions of contract that have to be met in a timeline, and one of them in the comments section is the 14 days if a variation isn't accepted. So what I want to know, and this becomes a question, when a variation comes through and you need to make a decision, how do you get it to an agenda item and call a council meeting to make that decision when it's beyond these amounts? That's the kind of consideration you need to give. If that time frame doesn't come, what's the legal impacts on a contract, and will it cost us more than what we're trying to muck around with at the moment? So they're the kind of things. There's other ways to manage things, but specifically a variation of contract means something's come up. It could be a latent condition that you have to make a decision on, that it's going to hold the job and you'll get empowered with other costs. So I really want to understand what, the exposure that we would have by not having a decision quick enough. I'm quite happy with the original officer's comments on there, but I think anything where we adjust things down and stuff, we start getting into contract law, and I think we're starting to expose ourselves a little bit further. This is kind of really serious things, and we need to be trust. One of the things that we can have in when making our decisions about contracts is the amount and limits that we put on that contract at the time that we make the decision here. But we're stuck in a legal loop with contractual conditions that we need to deal with in a timely manner, and it's set out in standards and clauses, so you've really got to watch those things. I'm involved with it on a regular basis, so I understand those exposures, and that's the issue that we're facing with making this thing about contract variations. We're in a different kettle of fish. I think if you were saying if it stems outside of a budget approval or something like that, that's a different issue. But if we've said, go away and cost this thing and this is what it's going to cost, then it comes back in a contract, we should be able to allow a percentage of the contract for delegation to approve. Otherwise, it's going to cost us more than you think.
Is there a speaker for the amendment? Speaker against? Oh. Councillor Townsroy.
I have a question because I brought this up at the agenda briefing, and it was to do with item number 114. Because on my copy it's still the same, so I don't know whether it was changed. But I actually asked whether, because there was a typo, whether the 5,000 and then the number 100,000 was 100,000 or 10,000. Now, I was told it was 100,000, so that's still, because I've got the one I've marked. So I too have concerns about this amendment because I've seen the way the staff are working, and I've come to meetings for years before I was elected to council, and I know that the staff here do have integrity, and there are checks and balances so that misappropriation of funds doesn't occur. So I'm actually concerned why we need to do this, and this is why I'm against this motion. No financial officer makes any decision on their own without someone else checking it, and so it's not, and I'm on the audit committee too. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Clues.
Thank you. Question, please, if I may.
Yes.
Chair. I can't think of a time, so I'm wondering if perhaps you or through you, the CEO, can think of a time since we made the original adjustment to the current that it's created a problem or been an issue, created a time issue.
Well, I don't deal with contract variation, so I'll have to put that question to the Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President, to my recollection, no. The proposed amendment is really observing situations that have occurred outside the Shire of Capel in other local governments, and Councillor McCleary's comment is correct in that in other local governments we've had situations where variations haven't been able to be dealt with within the timeline required. Therefore the work doesn't proceed, and that has resulted in penalties and extension of time claims. So it is absolutely essential that you deal with those. So no for the Shire, but yes within the rest of the local government industry, so we're just trying to get ahead of it.
Follow-up question, would it be fair to say that in those situations where it's happened that perhaps some mismanagement may have aided the situations that these other local governments found themselves in, and it wasn't strictly a council not having time to get together was the issue?
Being unaware of those issues, I couldn't comment on the internal affairs of other local governments. If the Chief Executive Officer is aware of internal matters of other local governments, I provide a comment.
Through you, Shire President, not to my knowledge, it's just simply a matter of time with 21 days. If the timing doesn't line up, then it doesn't allow the item to come to council.
Another question, I guess. I'm sure it's possible to have a special council meeting if it's absolutely of some form of urgency. It's not reliant solely on our ordinary council meetings.
Yeah, special meeting could be called if a matter is urgent.
Thank you. So it would seem to me that there's not actually any problem. None has ever existed since I've been here, and I think that we particularly as a group have never had a problem getting together for a special council meeting should one be required. And within 21 days, you're talking about 6 days of the month that we wouldn't be coming up to an ordinary council meeting in that time frame anyway. These risks seem to not exist that we're hearing about, so I'm happy to keep it unchanged as the amendment.
Are there any other speakers on the amendment? I'll put that. Oh, sorry. Councillor Noonan, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the comments from the all the councillors from the CEO. I think if you look at the schedule of meetings that we have, we're either at a workshop or a scheduled committee meeting virtually at least every second week. So, to further Councillor Cluse's point, I think getting us together, or a sufficient number of us together to have a special council meeting, I can't see that being a problem. We meet every 14 days, really, at least. And once again, I make the point, this is not at all about casting any aspersion or imputing anything against the very good work of our Shire officers. It's about us. This is us. This is the councillors' responsibility. And we shouldn't abrogate our responsibility to be in touch and informed about major variations. As we say, $200,000, we're looking at 2% of rates. And I think ratepayers would be rightly annoyed if we were to say 2% of your rates, I don't care. I'm not interested, I don't want to know about it. That's not what they put us here for, I believe. I think they put us here to be good stewards, good financial stewards, and that means showing an interest in the finances and the budget and rates and all of that sort of stuff, which we have been doing over the last, certainly all the time that I've been here, and particularly this last year. It's been a very good, a very thorough process, and I've really appreciated that. So I think the amendment is a good one, because it puts the responsibility or the onus back on us to do our job as councillors.
I'll put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 5-4. Against was myself, Councillor Dillon. Okay. So that becomes part of the substantive motion. All right, are there any speakers for or against? Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to do something procedural because it's been moved as an amended recommendation and not an amendment. If councillors are inclined to vote against the item because they are unhappy with the amendments, it would leave staff without a officer's recommendation. So I will foreshadow that if this item is lost, that I will foreshadow to move the original officer's recommendation. I don't actually, well, to add to the conversation, I think given my vote to reduce the amount in 102, I don't see an issue with, I remember when we dealt with this probably only 18 or so months ago, and we did reduce this figure down from 200,000 to the amount that it is now. I think the argument's been made pretty clear. I think it hasn't been a constraint from what I can understand within the organisation so far. But I will foreshadow the original officer's recommendation.
Are there any other speakers for or against? Councillor Territory, you can exercise your right, yes?
Okay, thank you. So just about cost savings and being fiscally responsible, holding special council meetings are expensive, and if it's unnecessary, I really don't see a point in calling them. I implore people to vote against this change to vote against this amendment. Yeah. Motion. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Clues.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm of the mind that a special council meeting is inexpensive, particularly the timeframes we're talking about. As Councillor Noonan mentioned, if we're going to be in this room every 14 days anyway, we're already here, the staff are already here, everything's already here, there's no costs at all, actually. No one gets paid anymore. We don't have to put on a dinner. It's probably cheaper than an ordinary council meeting, actually. So I don't think that's an issue at all, to be honest. And clearly it's not been an issue to date. So there was one other thing I've completely forgotten. That'll do me. Thanks. Sorry.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I take it that you can have a meeting in 14 days and you can organise all that. But at the end of the day, a variation on a contract might be a technical variation. It's going to come back to council and you're going to look at it and go, oh yeah, let's approve it. So we need to trust the employees, and the CEO is going to have quite a good look at it. He doesn't want to overspend the money in the budget either, and nor do the financial people. So you're going to have people really looking at these variations before they come back to council. So I really think that you need to give a bit of urgency, well, not so much urgency, but you need to give a bit of freelance to the staff to make those technical decisions that'll come to us, and we'll just tick the box. I mean, it's not, some of them we may not, but in the majority of cases it's going to be a technical decision. It needs to be, it might even slow up the process. So yeah, look, I implore to vote against this motion as it stands.
Councillor Clues.
Thank you. Question. Sorry, Chair. I remembered.
You can ask as many questions as you like.
Was there an investigation into corruption in one or more local governments, and part of the findings of the investigation was a recommendation that this number be dropped to somewhere along the lines of what we agreed to last time we had this before us?
That's a pretty broad spectrum question. I know there is local governments that have been caught in trouble before. I don't know. Their issues I don't think apply to us. In terms of, I think we're a pretty good organisation. But I'm not familiar with those recommendations, given I'm not
Thank
familiar
you, Chair.
with.
Yeah, sorry. I was. I seem to remember it being part of a particular investigation of a particular local government, and the report. Hopefully, you can refresh my memory. It wasn't necessarily a concern of corruption, merely a concern of good practice that the report outlined. That we don't remember at all. It was just.
If I'm thinking of the same local government, I think the suggestion came out on a tightening of financial controls. I don't think that was really to do within the actual spending amount, because I believe those amounts in their increments were less than what we're actually suggesting here anyway. It was the total accrued value, and the financial controls about how certain purchase orders were made.
Thank you. Yes, that was my question. Do you remember the name of that report? That's what I'm struggling with.
I can't recall the name of that report, but I think that came out of either the commission or out of an audit report.
Thank you. I thought it was someone's name. It was the last name of the person that. Never mind. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers on the item? I'll probably just say a few things. Like, I get everyone's argument. In the climate we're in, I understand the want for financial control measures, and I understand the need for officers to also be able to react quickly if there's a better price variation. I don't really have an issue if we have to have a special council meeting to come in. I'd probably rather avoid it if it's only coming in for one contract variation. What I'd probably like to see, I'm not going to stand in the way of the item to change it now. I think it's a change we can make to the delegation at a future point, but I'd probably like to see the actual removal of the actual dollar figures and instead just talk about percentage on contract variation and remove the minor price variation. If we approve, say for instance, the Civic Precinct, when we did the upgrade out here, it was $2.5 million upgrade. I think the CEO should be allowed just up to a 5% variation on that. And, you know, if we approve a road upgrade, which is only about $200,000, well, we'll give you a 5% variance on that. I think we should just have a percentage of variation based on the risk of the contract that we've already accepted. So I think we accept, if we're going to approve a $2.5 million project, the price variations on that will be quite a lot more than what they would be on smaller projects. I think within that risk, we should just accept that and not cap it with just a dollar figure. We could probably just watch that dollar figure through that condition too, which is the total accrued value of delegations, which we can then monitor through the information brochure, which we get every month as it is anyway. So that's probably what I'd like to see in the changes to the delegation eventually, but I think, I don't really want to stand in the way of the item tonight. Councillor Clues, question?
Thank you. Question.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned it. This will help clear my mind. The lovely Civic Precinct, I believe, because it was before my time, there was a adjustment made to change the flooring type from sand to softfall. Was that a variation?
The floor was always softfall. The variation was to reduce it just to sand to cover a increased cost in another location. I can't remember exactly what the increased cost was. Yep. So the advice at the time was we could save some money by reducing the scope in one area or just vary the contract. Yep. And that variation at the time was within the CEO's delegated authority, but he still sought the council's opinion.
Yeah, and did council think at the time that that was the appropriate and best way to deal with that, by having it come to council for discussion and approval?
The item could have been varied by the CEO at the time without discussion with council. It was within the delegation. It was more just understanding council's feeling about whether it wanted to reduce the scope from softfall to a sand base around the playground.
But you were a member of that council at the time. Do you remember council appreciating and supporting that process and think that was the correct action at the time?
It didn't come back to the council meeting. It was just a
Ah,
discussion because it was within the CEO's.
okay, it wasn't a council decision.
No, it was more just there's a cost-saving potential here. It will be reducing the scope of what has been approved. It was within the CEO's delegated authority. It was more just, does anybody want to reduce scope or vary the contract? So, yeah. Are there any more speakers? Then I'll offer the mover the right to close, Councillor Andrew.
Sorry. Thank you. I concur with Councillor Noonan that this isn't about thinking that there's any impropriety or that any of the staff are untrustworthy or anything like that. It's purely as part of our duty as councillors to be fiscally responsible and exactly know where $200,000 potentially is going. So that's the sole reason behind the amendment.
And I'll put that one to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? And that's carried 6-3. Have you got that, Tom? Dylan. Item 15.3, accounts paid during the month of April 2022. Is there a mover? Councillor Mogg. Seconder, Councillor Andrew. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, President. I move the motion as read and thank the officer's recommendation and our Chief Executive Officer and team with finance to get this through. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew.
I have a question, if I could.
Yes.
Some local councils have a program where individual athletes, if they're travelling or the like, can apply for a funding, for a grant. I don't recall ever seeing any applications like that. Is that a program that we run here at the Shire, or we purely have the minor grant scheme purely for organisations?
The Director of Community and Corporate.
Hello, thank you for your question. Yes, we still operate that scheme at the Shire, but I think we haven't seen any applications come through with COVID for the past 2 years. So there's been no sort of young community athletes that are sort of aspirational that have had the ability to be able to travel, hence come forward and claim the grant. Albeit I do believe there is one coming through in the very near future that I can give you some more information on when I receive it.
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Show President, I'd also add that the state government has exactly the same program to support regional athletes to attend selection and competition.
Anything further, Councillor? Any discussion on the accounts? Right, Councillor Mogg, do you wish to sum up? No? I'll put that to the... Oh. Sorry, I've already... Oh, sorry, apologies. I've already offered the right. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. 15.4, the financial statements for the 30th of April 2022. Is there a mover? Councillor McCleary, seconder. Councillor Townsroy. Councillor McCleary.
I just put the motion that the financial statements, move them.
Councillor Townsroy. Any discussion? Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's probably more of a question and clarification to the Director of Community and Corporate. So in the beginning of the officer's comment, and this is probably a question that I've asked a few times, but obviously there's a forecasted net current asset position of a surplus of $4,449,081. Now, that is made up by the funds that have been paid to the Shire early for projects in the next financial year. Could you please clarify the amount that has been paid to the funded to the Shire early?
The Director of Community and Corporate.
Thank you for your question. I couldn't give you the exact amount, but I know the percentage through the financial assistance grant is 75%. So if we were to take, and the financial assistance grant is thoroughly calculated when we're into the next financial year, because it's based on what revenue that you accrue through your rating and those types of mechanisms, and then the final payment within the financial assistance grant is paid in the second part of the financial year you're moving into. But just reflecting on the amount that was paid in this current financial year, it was around $946,000 we received. So if you, I suppose, assume that we would have a similar grant based on the current rating system, we probably received around $65,000 to $70,000. Sorry, 600. It's $650,000 to $750,000, which is around 75%.
Thank you. I guess the point I'm trying to get to is that the Shire's net actual position at the end of the year won't be a surplus. The budget won't be in surplus of $4.4 million.
No, if I just may answer your question. So the cumulative amount of the surpluses is obviously made up of the prepayments, which we just talked about, but there's a number of other grants that are holding within the main municipal funds that are being ring-fenced to carry forward to offset projects, so we're still paying for. So there's still some road funds in there, and then obviously there's money associated to the skate park. And then there's other forms of grants that historically, under the current financial management standards, that we would be able to populate or ring fence those funds as what we call contingent liabilities. But when the financial management standards changed and we weren't able to retain those grants as a contingent liability, sort of takes it away from surpluses, so it doesn't look as though you've got excess surpluses on your books. We have to show them as that, even though they are ring fenced to fund projects going forward.
So do we know what the actual budget deficit or surplus position will be, negative minus those carried forward funds?
Okay, so far, and when we did the mid-year budget review, we're still projecting the same around 266,000 deficit that we started at the start of the year.
No, thank you. I just think with part of the financial statements, and I know there's a lot of legislative requirement about how they're presented. I think for my own knowledge as well, and I would like to think for everyone else's knowledge, it would be good to see the actual forecasted surplus or deficit within the financial statements, at least in the officer's comment. But yeah, that's where I was hoping to go with that. So thank you for answering my array of questions.
No worries.
Any other questions or discussion? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, that was a very valid query and statement from Councillor Shiano. It kind of gives a false indication of where we are in a financial statement just because of the early payments and funds. And reading through it, you've got to declare it as an income stream, and then it becomes spent in the year that we're supposed to spend it in. Yeah, very, very valid, and it'd be nice to kind of expand on that in future statements in this. So, yeah.
All right. Sorry, the mover has exercised their right of reply. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Item 15.5, the Shire of Capel Workforce Plan 2022 to 2026. Moved, Councillor Mogg. Your hand up. Seconder, Councillor Noonan. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, President. I move the motion as read and endorse the Shire officers' recommendation and thank the officers and team involved in putting this motion together. And we had a fantastic presentation by the Manager Organisation Development, staff member, and thank you.
Councillor Noonan.
Yeah, just to thank the officers for the work that they have put together, putting the report together, the workforce plan together, and I think it's a good report. Outlines it shows the forward planning that the Shire is doing, and I think in that way we're positioning ourselves well, and getting ready for that anticipated growth.
Is there a speaker against? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Afraid I'm a bit of a negative Nancy tonight. I have some concerns with this one that stem from some. There's been a similar complaint that I've had since my time here and even before about the systemic way that we do these kinds of things. And so I'll just to point out my example. Firstly, on page 229, it mentions the workforce. The workforce plan projects full-time equivalent numbers to increase to 108.73. What are they currently? I can't see that in there. So I don't know what that means. But this is by the end of 25-26, so just 4 years away. So approximate 5% growth per year over the life of the plan. Well, the workforce projections are.
Is that a question, Councillor?
No, I'm speaking.
Sure. Just
sorry. So, unless someone can point out where it does have the current numbers, the current.
Our current FTE.
98.73. Thank you. So. 93.7. Thank you. So. 93.75. Thank you. So. It really should be mentioned in this paragraph what this 108 is comparing itself to. Otherwise, I don't understand the sense of it. So it would be nice if that had have been there just to clarify. But my big problem that I have that troubles me every time we have these plans, and whether it be long-term financial plans, work plans, forecasting plans, is this one paragraph by itself from page 227. Based on population data forecast by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, published in their WA Tomorrow 2016 to 2031 report for local government, etc. So my concern is that once again we're going to base a plan on a fairy tale. We did this before with rates and long-term financial plan for rates, and it failed miserably. The numbers were spectacularly wrong. So I really don't like seeing plans based on fairy tale numbers, and I believe, once again, that's what this is. I don't know a better way, so perhaps this is just all there is, and I'm just going to have to continue not liking it. But I sure would rather have a discussion about setting goals around actual population figures year on year, rather than setting plans around fairy tale figures given to us by a department that has a history of being wrong. So that's my concerns with it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for? Yes, Councillor.
So if we stick to page 227, as Councillor Clues has just stated, So the paragraph, current organisation resourcing context. So it talks about how that neighbouring shires typically service to 4.5 full-time equivalent per 1,000. We resource to 3.5 per 1,000 people. Oh, hang on. Yep. With the increase of hires, are we maintaining that ratio for the estimated increase of population, or is it getting to what that figure is and then also increasing? So it's like double, it's like it's exponentially increasing. Does that make sense?
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President, Councillor, I think I understand what you're asking. What the information that you cited, what that shows is the current, I guess, more limited resources that the Shire has compared to some of our like neighbours. So the proposed growth over the 4-year life of the plan includes a combination of some catch-up in terms of, I guess, our more limited resources compared to our neighbours, plus an allowance on top of that for anticipated growth in population at that time. So it's a combination of the two things.
Is there anything further, Councillor? Is there any speakers for or against? Councillor Tarantroy?
I'm speaking for. I was just, when I read this document, I was wowed. It's looking at 10.2, so it's looking at 52% turnover of staff. It's looking at succession planning. It's looking at 10.4, that's to seek funding for a volunteer coordinator, which is a much needed thing. In item 10.8, it specifies how the majority of the workforce with the Shire has been here for less than 4 years. So we're having a high staff turnover. And they're looking at investigating into, like with 10.9, they're looking at IR Industrial Amendments Bill 2021, but they're also looking at investigating enterprise agreement bargaining to try and, have these staff stay longer. And 10.10, again, they're looking at attraction tools to try and get people to stay here, because we're sort of a band 3. Hopefully soon, like in the future, we will move to a band 2. But right now, the staff here are overworked for what they've got. So we need this workforce plan is an amazing document. So I mean, I've read it and I could keep going. I've got lots of things highlighted that were just brilliant, and I don't see a problem with this. I want to commend the staff on their dedication to getting this done. They've even got 10.11 looking at strategic partnerships. So this is one of the, and also another one which is awesome. I can't find the table right now, but I remember reading about it. Flexible work arrangements. Most of the Shire staff are female. However, they're working not full-time. Most of the full-time workers are males. So most of the workers are women, but they're working part-time to balance their other commitments to family. And we know that in Australia, most women, I think it's 95% of women, 95% of the caring of children is done by women. And this is why the women are working part-time. Now, this affects their superannuation, if something happens in their marriage and they have to separate, it affects everything. So I really believe that this document is a positive document, and I applaud the work on this stuff. I mean, I'm all for women's rights, and I'm also, equity. And I mean, even like when we're looking at who's employed here, I can't remember the percentage, 5% with disabilities, or was it 5% with Indigenous and then 4% with the disabilities? These two things need to be looked at as well, and they're actually covered in this document. So yeah, I think it's a fabulous document, and I implore everyone on council to vote for this motion. Thank you. Sorry if I got a bit passionate, but
Thank you, Councillor. Due to a rigid standing order, I'll have to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes, so I can use the bathroom. So I'll adjourn the meeting at 8:23 for 5 minutes. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order at 8:28 p.m. So, are there any further speakers to the motion? Councillor McCleary.
First of all, I've got a question. It states in here that we're a couple of FTE behind. Does the numbers in the figures include those full-time equivalents that we should have, even though we've got a shortfall? Like in your table.
That was my question.
Yeah. So there's a shortfall of 5.47 positions that we don't have filled. Are they accounted in FTEs per 1,000, or is that something we still have to fill and then fill the next lot that we're expecting to fill?
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President, when the per 1,000 residents calculation was made, it was assumed a full FTE count, so no vacancies. So it assumes that all positions are filled. So those vacancies that we're currently carrying change from time to time, and they're not included in the calculations. So we'd still need to fill those vacancies.
Okay, and just checking on that note that the number of FTEs, we're just not filling the positions that we need to fill currently. So yeah, look, it's nice to have a plan, and I agree with where we're heading on this, but the current economic status was going to show that we're still going to struggle to fill positions. It's going to take a bit of time, but you've got to have a plan, and that's where we're going. Where we've got to guess at the growth. I'm assuming that this will come back to council as we load up with more people, or we realise that, well, we don't need that many. So I think it's a plan, and it says the workforce plan is commended to the council for review, and although not required to be adopted by the council under the integrated planning and reporting framework, the council's support and endorsement of the plan is sought. So basically that's what we're doing.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Clues, question?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm that $1.3 million over 4 years additional to, I guess, what we're already doing. I just wanted to confirm that so that's about 10% of rates, is that correct?
Approximately.
Thank you.
Question, Councillor McCleary.
Question to the CEO. The amount of money that we have for FTEs, how much of that is funded externally rather than from the rate revenue, rather than choosing a 1% base?
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President, the vast majority of those positions are funded through our municipal budget. We do have a small number of positions that are, I guess you'd say, co-contributed, as primarily from the state government as part of traineeships and those types of things, but the vast majority of those FTEs are solely funded through the municipal budget.
Are there any other speakers? I suppose I'll say a few things. I think it's great that we've got this workforce plan coming to us. It's the first one since 2013. Despite projecting future staff demands and growth areas, which I think we need to have a plan for, especially based on our corporate business plan. There's a lot of new work there to be done, so we need to allocate new staff to do that. But I think the great thing about what this plan actually identifies is improving our onboarding and succession planning. About 25% of our staff has been here over 6 years. So without proper succession planning, when they leave the building, that's a lot of corporate knowledge which walks out the door. So we need to do everything we can to make sure the skills and experience that they attained in their time here can be passed on to the next generations. So, yeah, I commend the report, and I want to thank the staff, the CEO and our Manager of Human Resources, who has put a hell of a lot of work into this. So I commend the workforce plan. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, just to reiterate the point that
Sorry, Councillor, you've already spoken as the
Yeah.
seconder. Do you have a question or?
well, okay, yes, Mr. President, just to confirm, if you would, my presumption that if we don't achieve the growth that we're anticipating in the report, or if we find ourselves in a financial situation where we simply can't afford to put these additional staff on, that this plan doesn't lock us in to any a particular growth pattern, so that we only put these people on if we need them and if we can afford them. Would that
Like
correct?
any plan that the Shire adopts, it's subject, of course, to each individual financial year's budget. So if growth in a particular area is unaffordable, then either we have to increase revenue to meet that cost, or we have to look at either reductions of costs or changes to service levels. So like any other thing, it's subject to each individual financial year. Do you want to elaborate? Sorry? Any other questions? Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Towntroy.
I think I might have had my percentages wrong. Could you confirm that the percentage of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders was 3% and disability was 4%?
Employment. Sorry, I'm just double checking. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island employees represent about 3%. Disability represents about 4%. Any other questions or people to speak for or against? Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? No. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? That's carried 8-1. Item 15.6, the 2022-23 draft annual budget fees and charges schedule. Is there a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Towntroy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Andrew. Councillor Towntroy. You better turn your microphone on. Councillor, your microphone.
I move the draft annual budget as read.
It's the fees and charges schedule.
Sorry, draft annual budget read the second. Sorry, I didn't read the second half. That's the 2022-23 draft annual budget fees and charges schedule. As read.
Councillor Andrew. Are there any speakers against the motion? Speakers for? Any discussion? No? Councillor Towntroy, do you wish to close? Oh, sorry, I should have looked. Okay, I'll put that one to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. There is no new business of an urgent nature. Item 17, public question time. Any questions? No questions? Motions without notice? Is there any from any member of the council? Motions for consideration at the next ordinary meeting of the council. There are no items for consideration behind closed doors. There being no further business on the agenda tonight, I will declare the meeting closed at 8:38. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight.